In, the skills that you learned in the CIA, is that what you can use in business, day-to-day life, etc.?
I would put the question the other way, and did the skills I learned were the skills that I learned in the business life applicable to working in the CIA? And the answer to that is absolutely.
Every challenge holds a story. Every struggle is a spark. Welcome to A Legend Forged, where athletes, heroes, and fearless fighters of disability defy the odds and rewrite the rules. Learn to live an unfiltered life with the unstoppable Aron O'Dowd. A Legend Forged begins now. Welcome to A Legend Forged with Aron O'Dowd. Coming up today on the show, Aron is sitting down and talking with former CIA intelligence officer and keynote speaker on leadership, Jeffrey Sanow. As we start the conversation today, they're just beginning to get into his love of working globally around the world in secret. And Jeffrey has a love of adventure and working for the CIA.
When we grew up as kids, we watch all the movies. Did you ever imagine to think you'd be working for the CIA?
I grew up in an era when James Bond was the man. I mean, Sean Connery was the man. Um, and I also remember watching a TV show with Ephraim Zimbalist Jr., FBI. So I watched those shows growing up, but I never really anticipated that I would eventually move into an international career followed by a career in the CIA. That wasn't something that I thought about until much later in life. Maybe it seeded my desire for adventure, although honestly speaking, as I talk about in my book, it was my family that drove me out of the country. They were just too nutty for words. So, I don't want to blame my parents. Everybody does that. Divorce, things like that, blah, blah, blah. So at age 20, I ran away from home. I joined the Peace Corps and went to North Africa. And that's when my international career started.
Well, what made you go to Africa?
Africa was just always one of those mysterious places that I wanted to visit. I don't know why. As I look back on history, and I'm not sure if this is correct or not, but if you remember the National Geographic magazines that had the pictures of the dancing African women and what they weren't wearing, that may have been what motivated me to go to Africa. I don't really know. But I was always attracted to Africa and the mystery and, Livingston and all the great adventures that we read about as kids or that I read about as a kid. So that was my appeal. For whatever reason, Asia, as much as I like Asia, because I've lived in Asia also, but I was never drawn to it. And Latin America just puts me right to sleep. So I was excited about going to Africa, and I ended up. I went to North Africa, which, believe me, is very different from the rest of Africa. North Africa is very much a different culture and religion and such things, as opposed to Central Africa as well. So I've been to see a lot of it. I've seen a lot of both of them. And I've been lucky to do that. And I want to personally thank all the taxpayers that are watching your show for paying their taxes, because that made it possible for me to have a great career.
Why the Peace Corps?
Because I was standing at a bus stop at Ohio State University at the age of 20 on my way to one of the far campuses. And there was a little sign in the wall that said, "See the world, join the Peace Corps," or something to that effect. And the Peace Corps office was approximately 100 feet away. So I said, why not? So I went in there. I talked to the Peace Corps rep. It's on the agriculture campus of Ohio State University. And I didn't make my class that day, but an hour later, I left with my application and filled it out, and off I went. I mean, it's lots and lots of 20-year-olds, 18-year-olds, whatever, have to find a way to find their own path. Many of them don't find a good path for whatever reason. Not that they're bad people, but maybe they make a decision that exposes them to some things that aren't really good. I made the decision that I was going to find my own path, but it was going to be something good. I looked at the military, and the military really wasn't for me for whatever reason. And that's why when I was standing in that bus stop and I went and talked to the guy about the Peace Corps, it's, yeah, this is for me. And I can assure you, my father was not the least bit happy when I dropped out of college. He was very happy when I went back to college, but he was not at all happy that I dropped out. Because so how many people do you know that drop out of college to find themselves, to see the world, and then end up never going back, and they basically, for lack of a better term, ruin their lives because they miss getting that very important piece of paper that says you have a college degree.
In searching for your path, when did you find it, and what did it look like for you?
I made the decisions to continue pursuing adventure when my time in Tunisia as a Peace Corps volunteer was coming to an end. Because at that time, the only thing I had waiting for me was more Ohio State University and more cold Ohio winters. And so I decided to extend and go to a different country in Peace Corps. So I went to Gabon, which is in Central Africa, right? I was literally right on the equator.
And do you enjoy the adventures?
Oh, heavens, yes. Yeah. The last phrase in my book, on the last page where I have a picture of me at age 20 as a Peace Corps volunteer in Tunisia and at age 65 sitting here in Florida. And the catchphrase is, "Cry havoc and let slip the dogs of adventure." That's a quote from Shakespeare, changed a little bit. His exact quote is, "Cry havoc and let slip the dogs of war."
Mm-hmm.
I don't want war. I want adventure. So yes, I'm all about adventure. I'm all about enjoying life. Life isn't not all adventures are fun. Don't kid yourself. And they all come with risk. But doesn't mean it's not worth it.
And what is the biggest challenge you faced in your life?
Adjusting to life back in the United States. And, my book is dedicated to my now ex-wife. And as I say in my dedication, the fact that she's my ex-wife is the biggest regret that I will have.
Wow, you wouldn't think that, but we all have different regrets,
I don't have a lot of regrets except that one. And that's nothing I can do about it. It is what it is. I mean, we've been separated for 10 years, I think divorced for 5 or something like that. So it's not a new thing. That doesn't mean it's still not one of my regrets.
And what is the biggest success that you've had in your life?
When I was in the CIA, the successes that we had in working with our partners around the world to monitor the movement of weapons of mass destruction, the weapons of mass destruction, was a very satisfying period. We collaborate with all of our intelligence partners in one fashion or another, pretty much all around the world, because nobody thinks weapons of mass destruction, which include nuclear weapons, chemical weapons, biological weapons, and the missile systems that deliver them, nobody thinks those are a good thing. We all have them. Nobody likes them. Nobody ever wants to use them. God willing, nobody ever will. So it was very satisfying to work to prevent those movements and collaborate with our partners in preventing the movement of that material from countries that aren't our friend.
We watch a lot of movies in relating to the CIA and different espionage content, but in the job you did, what, for listeners to understand what it looks like, is there a movie or something that kind of gets close to what you were doing at the time?
Yeah, there is a movie, actually. It's the movie Argo with Ben Affleck. First of all, that movie is based on a true story. It's the story of getting the 6 Americans that got out of the embassy in Tehran and hid in a Canadian ambassador's house. And he hid them down in the basement or wherever it was. And it's the true story of how a cover company was created in Hollywood to make a movie that needed to be done on location. And that's the essence of the story. And it's true. That is what happened. And then when they left, they made sure and blend in the six Americans with them so they could all get out and get on a plane. So it's a true story. It demonstrates some of the silliness that we go through in all government agencies, not just the CIA. But if you remember, there's a couple scenes in that movie where Ben Affleck is talking because the government bureaucrats says, well, we'll give them bicycles and they can ride the bicycles all the way up in Iran to the border with Turkey. Of course, it was the dead of winter, and it was a silly idea. And frequently, congressional aides, God bless them for the work they do, frequently they come up with silly ideas and they ask really silly questions. And because the agency is subservient to them, and by that I mean they control the money, we have to actually give them respectful answers. And so I've had some silly questions asking me, and all you can do is try and give them an honest answer.
In the work you did you feel scared in any way of fulfilling it?
Well, you can't be in a foreign country that has a habit of imprisoning spies and not be concerned for your well-being. Did I have scary moments? Oh, I had a couple. In one country, I was just met with an asset, and I was walking back to my car, and there was another car kind of parked in front of it, like they pulled over in front of my car. It wasn't parallel, it was just kind of caddied in there a little bit. And there are these two guys walking back and forth in front of my car, and I was in disguise, so I didn't look like the handsome me. I looked like somebody else. And I saw them, and as I'm walking towards my car, I decided to go ahead and make the block and try and decide what do you do. They didn't grab me when I made the corner, so that meant that they didn't recognize me, which was a good thing. And finally, I just decided that if they have my car, they have my house, therefore they have my family. So I made the block, hopped in the car, and drove off. And it was nothing. That does not mean the pucker factor was there. The scariest thing all operations officers have is an imagination. So that we see something and it's like, no, what if? And we need to keep our imagination under control to keep our fear level under control so we can make good decisions.
The power of imagination. You don't think of it until you hear how it can do and damage to people,
Absolutely. And that's where sometimes, again, we have to keep it under control. We have to keep a grip on reality and make hard decisions. And look, the career I had is not for everybody. And there are lots of careers I couldn't have because I don't have the right personality type. I did have the right personality type for mine, where I could control my imagination and not let it get the better of me.
In, the skills that you learned in the CIA, is that what you can use in business, day-to-day life, etc.?
I would put the question the other way. And did the skills I learned, were the skills that I learned in the business life applicable to working in the CIA? And the answer to that is absolutely. The CIA and being an intelligence officer is all about one's ability to connect with and get along with other people of other cultures, other backgrounds, and other languages. That same applies in the headquarters building because, again, I want to emphasize this. The people that work in the CIA, 8 to 5 or 7 to 6, whatever, they're the best this country has to offer. So the ability to work with them is critical. The ability to work with other people in other countries is critical. The ability to understand the stresses is critical. I had when I first took up a management position, my boss said to me, the most important thing for me to learn was how to communicate with each officer that worked for me. Okay, so I had what I did was all the emails that I sent out, all the cable traffic. The first paragraph was always, "Hi, how are you? How are the kids? How's your husband or wife? How was Christmas?" Etc. The personal touch.
Mm-hmm.
And I had one lady who worked for me out in Asia came to my office after she'd been working for me for about a year and said, "Please stop putting that paragraph in," because she knows I didn't care. She didn't care that I didn't care. She wanted to quit reading it. Okay, you've told me what you want, and as long as you're working hard, doing your job, I will work the way you want me to. Because one of the important things in leadership, I'm not there to make myself look good. I'm there to make her be successful. That's my job as a leader, to make my staff be successful, to remove obstacles and provide them with incentives and the tools that they need to be successful. That's my job. So to help her be successful meant she had to quit wasting time reading that first paragraph. I can do that.
In your opinion, the leadership that you portray, was that born or created through your career?
Was it born? I don't really think anybody has leadership born in them. They might have certain personality traits that lend itself to leadership, but leadership is something that you learn over time through training. I was very blessed with a lot of leadership training when I was in the CIA, because they have a variety of levels of training, and it's very good. They figured out about 50 years ago that they needed to train leaders. Just because you're a case officer does not make you a leader. So being a good case officer is a very different skill than being a good leader of case officers. So I went through a lot of training in that, a lot of great training that they put in place that helped me be a better leader. And I enjoyed it. They take it very seriously, as everybody should. Every company should take their leadership training very seriously, so that they can help their up and coming leaders develop into strong leaders.
And that's what is fantastic, is the leadership of being able to do it. But when do you think it becomes a stage where you are the leader of what you do?
That gets to the school answer of it depends. I spent much of my time mostly by myself, both in the business world, even as a Peace Corps volunteer. And then when I came into the agency, I brought a lot of skills, but leadership wasn't one of them, other than my own personality. So that's when it became clear to me and to those around me that I would benefit from going through some leadership training, from trying from helping me to understand what are some leadership techniques. I know your question is going to be, what are those techniques? And I don't remember, I'll be honest with you.
That wasn't my question, but okay.
For me, it all comes down to communication. It comes down to developing an understanding with each employee. And as I said, I gave you two examples of where with the one lady, we got along great. She wanted me to do something and I did it. It goes back to servant leadership is the term that I think is in use today, where I serve the people that work for me. I served that lady by stopping doing what I was doing because it just wasted her time. I served that gentleman by making sure he understood how to talk and how to communicate with me. And so that servant leadership mindset, that I'm here to help you be successful. When I was in Northern Virginia in the agency, I took over a large office. And the first thing that I did, our first staff meeting, we probably had 30 people at it. We went to a conference room and I had everybody stand up, move the chairs out of the way, push the table against the wall, and then move all the chairs back into a circle. What message was I sending them? The message is there's nothing between us to prevent good discussion. You might have the most junior guy in the room that comes up with the best idea for the specific operation. Age and experience are not necessarily factors in coming up with good intelligence operations. How old is the field of intelligence, do you think, Aron? How long have we been spying on one another?
A couple of 100 years, I'd say.
Oh, no, young man. No.
Oh,
How about a couple of 1,000 years? If you read Joshua in the Bible, after the Israelites had left Egypt, Joshua was the one that sent the two spies into Jericho. And they were helped by the harlot, which is a polite biblical term for prostitute, she hid them. So that was 5,000 years ago. So, which is the world's oldest profession? Is it espionage or is it prostitution? But we've been doing it a very, very long time, and we're pretty good at it. But we have to keep coming up with new ideas, new ways to do things, because it's the world's oldest profession. So pretty much every idea out there has been tried. Nobody has the book on new ideas. So that's why when I took over the office, we all sat around, nothing to prevent us from looking right at each other. There's no head of table, I'm the boss. No, we need to come up with operations to serve the American people. And that's what we did collectively.
we're all here on this earth to do something. What do you think your mission is to serve humanity?
Currently, I serve humanity by helping people understand what is going on in the rest of the world. That's my book. My book, thank you for putting it up, is Human for Humanity. And what it takes a look at all the different countries and cultures that I visited in my time overseas. And it's so important to understand that we Americans don't need to leave the state they're in. Most of them don't need to leave the county they're in to have a full, happy life. But there's so much of a world out there. And that's what I wanted to write about in my book. All the many different countries that people can visit. All the many different places that people can visit. And, I talk about Lebanon. Lebanon is the Whitney Houston of the Middle East. Why do I say that? You might be a little bit young, but when Whitney Houston came on the scene, she was amazing. She was beautiful. She could sing. She could dance. She was so talented. Beirut, Lebanon was the same way. It was a fascinating city. It was French colony, but it had North African, Turkish, Iranian, Middle Eastern influence, all in one port city. Unfortunately, if you fast forward to, I think, 1985, was when the Civil War started. And much like Whitney Houston not ending well, it didn't end well for Lebanon. And they need to figure out how to remove the people that are causing the violence. And I don't know that they can do that. I don't have any suggestions on how they do that. I'm sure they don't want the Israelis bombing them all the time. I can understand that. But just as with the many other places in the world, it's not ending well. And that's kind of the point I wanted to make in my book. There's a big world out there. Americans need to get better at understanding it.
You probably can speak many languages of touring the world through the work you did.
Yes. My first languages were French and Arabic. I spent a lot of time speaking Arabic. I learned to speak some Thai, and I learned to speak Greek, and a little bit of Bahasa Indonesia.
That's a well-flavored language that you're speaking.
Well, I think one of the things, again, Americans, because we got these two big bodies of water on each coast and this great big cold place to the north of us, we don't really put a lot of stress on learning a foreign language. The possible exception is Spanish because of our southern border. Most countries require students to learn a second language when they're in elementary school. So they start to learn English, which is a common one, or another foreign language at a very young age. We typically don't do that, which is unfortunate because not everybody speaks, well, many people speak English. English is largely the international language. Nonetheless, learning the local language is the greatest form of respect because that says you're interested in that country, you're interested in those people, and you want to learn their language. You want to learn to be like one of them, to speak like one of them. And that's a huge compliment. So even if you just know how to say, hi, how are you? Things like that, that shows respect. I was not particularly fluent in any of my languages. Arabic I could get by. Whenever I was traveling around the Middle East speaking Arabic, I confused a lot of people because I got my baby blue eyes. The good thing is the Crusaders left off a lot of baby blue-eyed genes and DNA as they went through the Middle East. So it wasn't unusual, or it wasn't unheard of. But between my obvious complexion, my blue eyes, and my accent, and it's when I spoke Arabic, people just couldn't figure out where I was from. So at any rate, it worked out well.
Cool. Wow. If there was one piece of advice to give the audience, what would it be?
Cry havoc and let loose the dogs of adventure. Follow your heart. Follow adventure. Don't be afraid to go on an adventure. Yeah, it's got risks. We do what we can to minimize those risks. But don't be afraid to have an adventure. Let loose the dogs of adventure and go have fun. There's a big world out there. You should go see as much of it as you can. It might mean just going to another state. Doesn't mean you have to travel overseas. If you live in Maine, come visit us in Florida. Actually, my neighbors are from Maine. But go visit different parts of this country. Try and visit other countries overseas. There's some fascinating historical places out there. I mean, I've already talked about Syria, but you have other places that are crucial to our culture. I mean, go to Rome, visit the Colosseum, go to the Vatican. I mean, these are places that affect what we do every day.
And in your latter age that you are, Jeffrey, are you still on adventures for life?
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. I do my best to go on adventures as much as possible. Writing a book is an adventure, but my wife is from Uganda, and so I've lived there and visited there, and I'll be visiting there again, I'm sure. I'm doing some work out in California, which for anybody that knows anything, that's its own separate state, I'm telling you, kind of like Texas. I go there. I'll be going there in September to do some work and participate in some of the activities I do out there. I'm getting involved in making movies. Who'd have thunk it?
Who would?
Not me.
No.
The lady who is my agent got me involved with a company called the Mindatorium, and they're making movies, and they need someone with actual CIA experience that can write about it so the movie's accurate. And I went through a long process with the CEO, and so now he's going to sign me to a different movie contract. Blah blah blah. Why would I stop having adventure? I don't think I could, and if I did, I'd probably drive my wife insane.
On that note, Jeffrey, thank you so much, man. You are a tapestry of adventure.
It's always a pleasure, brother. You take care of yourself.